Executive Linux Committee to order. Curtis Snell, would you mind doing the invocation?
Dear Heavenly Father, be with us as we go through the procedure today. And Lord, just take us home safely after the committee meetings and give us strength and wisdom, Lord, in the meetings. And thank you for this nice spring day, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please.
Jody Fishingham.
Here.
Chuck Huskin Jr.
Here.
Bill Anglin.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Joe Berg. Julia Coates. Meredith Fraley. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Dawn Barfin. Frankie Hargis.
Present.
China Glory Jordan.
Present.
Lee Keener. Dick Way.
Here.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
David Thornton.
Present.
David Walkingstick.
Here.
Kara Callahan.
Need.
We do have a quorum.
I'm here.
Do I hear a motion for the approval of February 21st
So moved.
minutes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hey,
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda at this time to add as a new business item, I would call it new business item number 3, the resolution providing for the donation of the laptop to the Indian Women's Pocahontas Club. And I would also ask that we accept the written reports in lieu of the oral presentations.
due to the time constraint, I understand that. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Roll call.
Because we won't be able to ask questions, point of information, right? If this motion passes, we will not be able to ask questions?
I will allow you to ask, if you do not want to dispense with it, if you could keep them brief. We have another meeting at 4:30. The one previously has run over into this one.
Madam Chairwoman, I would amend my motion just to amend the agenda to add these, add the Pocahontas Club resolution and dispense, and go ahead with the reports, but make them brief.
Okay. First person up, Sean Slayton.
Wait, we have to.
Oh,
Yes,
oh,
aye.
All opposed? Mr. Slayton, you can report first.
Are we skipping Lacey?
No, I said Mr. Slayton can report first.
Good afternoon. Be reporting on January results for Cherokee Nation businesses and its entities. January, we had a good month, net income of $6.2 million, and then we have turned the corner in terms of gaming that month and headed into our strongest quarter of the year, which is always the first quarter. We'll be looking forward to reporting to you in February on a record month for the company, and also a strong March.
So we're dispensing with reports and we're just going to questions, right? Okay, thank you. So so there will be an RFP for the new line of credit,
Yes.
is that correct? And then the C&E audit report did show a clean audit for the past year for C&E.
Yes.
Then also, can you send the details on the horse barn at Will Rogers Downs? Because it said that it was in the reports, it said it was within the authority of the, I heard about it way after the fact. Had no idea that we were doing it. So do we have like a business case with it and the actual cost that it was?
It was approximately $350,000. We don't have enough capacity there for the horses, so we added a barn. I believe it was 60 stalls. We've been
Okay.
out of capacity there for a long time.
And then, I mean, that's feedback I got from the community too. So then the Tahlequah Casino is not a go, and that was a decision of the administration
It was
left to the board. The board said,
It was a board's decision based on the economics of the business case.
that's not the way the minutes read from the committees. So you might review that.
How do you understand it?
That the board left it to the administration, that yes, the business case did not necessarily support it, but it was purely a decision of the administration, and they would do either one. Because the way the trust application reads is, we will move. That's the way the original trust application read, is that that is a temporary site that would long-term be a school, in the way we put it in trust.
Okay.
There's no issues around that, and I'll try to get with you offline, but, I'm concerned about the wind project at Chilocco. Are we giving away some kind of rights on the wind project?
I don't know the specifics of the agreement, but rather than develop it ourselves, I think we have farmed that out and retained a royalty interest in the revenue. But again, I don't
Can we get a
recall the
copy of that?
specifics. Uh-huh.
Because that was, since that's such important property. And
Sure.
that's- Okay. Then, there was something about the London tour, but it didn't name who we were paying for. Are we paying for somebody other than like staff that are critical to the actual tour?
Yes, I think there are several that we are including in the trip. I'll get the names, don't want to say because I may leave somebody out.
Okay, and you'll just
I'll
email that
provide
to us?
that, yes.
Okay. And is the J Laundry, has the opening already been done? Because it said it was February 12th.
No, we began training last week and we didn't have enough pressure on the washer, so they're having to upsize
Okay.
one of the lines to a 3-inch line. It should have been done yesterday, and they were going to try to start training, I think, tomorrow. But it's shortly.
And then you'll let us know so we can.
Absolutely, yeah, there'll be a grand opening announcement.
There's two more questions really quick. CNI money on impact, so I'm trying to read these reports and I'm trying to condense these questions.
Okay.
So the CNI money seems to have been impacted due to federal dollar delays. So on those new contracts, are we gonna have any issues around that? It wasn't in the DOD side, it was more of other issues because our revenue was not meeting potential, the way I understood it, because delays in federal spending.
Some of the diversified businesses that are 8A businesses have had some contracts delayed in funding the first 2 quarters. They're just slow coming out of the gate at Washington, D.C. So that pushes their revenue, a timing matter, later into the business cycle, depending on when they let those funds loose for that particular contract. So if you look at the budget for some of those diversified businesses, they won't be hitting their budgeted numbers, but the contract, as far as we know, has not been canceled. It's just not been funded yet.
And that's not gonna be that's not part of the bigger contracts that we're seeing?
No.
Okay.
No.
So on the Kellyville shop, you have 36 employees there. Are any of them Cherokee? I think we're moving them back into we're moving them into the 14 counties and abandoning the Kellyville site?
We have a business analysis going on that Red Wing location, and we'll be forthcoming in the next couple of months with a plan for that. We haven't made any decision to date that has been taken to the board for approval.
Okay, then last, KTMG, was that bid out?
That was not bid out.
How much is it gonna cost us in order to save unknown amounts?
That particular contract, I do not know the details of. I'd have to get those to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Madam
I was
Chair.
about to say, to help out Kara, why don't you send them to him in an email, and he can disperse them to the whole council, and it might be better off 2 or 3 days in advance, or a week in advance if you would give them to Mr. Slayton so he could help you get answers quicker.
I probably retained about a third of that, so.
Well, and I am gonna follow up, but I think that to answer your question, Madam Chair, at least, maybe not on the business side, but on the government side, I've been having a lot of difficulty in getting responses. And then a lot of folks are asking what they are because they're watching the meetings. So that should come out here in the meetings to some degree for the public, for the transparency. So there's a balance I'm trying to strike, but I
Any other
appreciate and will
questions?
listen.
Any other questions for Mr. Slayton?
One question. Talking about the casino project here in Cherokee County,
Yes, sir.
was that recommended by the old board or the new board?
The business case for that was predicated on moving out of the existing casino and turning that over to a school. And that was underneath the old board back, the other administration when that was reviewed.
Yes,
And-
and what I recall wasn't Chairman Hannah, when he gave the report, he said due to the feasibility study did not support the
That-
casino?
That's correct.
That's what
Yes.
I understood. And then, I think, add one more thing. I think Mike Watkins said that he made a recommendation there's going to be an outside auditor as well, come and look at the books. Is that correct?
Yes, the audit
That was
committee.
voted on.
The audit committee engaged the outside audit, but I do not know the particulars of the audit since it went through the audit committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sean, the Shalako ground and the wind turbine,
Yes, sir.
was that for the western side of Shalako that we had, was the eastern side?
I don't know which parcel it pertained to. I just knew it as the Shalako property.
And that, I guess, was that run through council and approved, or was just CNB? just
It was
taking
it was a long-term CMB project. It's been studied for a long time, and they've just now come out with a recommendation on that particular project.
And have y'all expended monies on it yet?
Through a
Other
grant.
than- Through grant.
Through grants, and I would have to look to see if any of our money has gone into that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you.
That's all.
Sean, on the horse barn up at WRD, preference was given to Cherokees for the new stalls, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sean, back to the KPMG question.
Yes.
Since you didn't bid it out, what is the hourly rate? And is it open-ended or?
Meredith, I would have to pull that contract or ask the audit committee to get the answers to those questions, because that's who negotiates.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton.
Thank you.
Back up to Mrs. Horn. Questions for her?
Thank you. Before we start into the questions, I would like to say that the comprehensive annual financial report for September 30th, 2011 will be issued hopefully tomorrow if all things go according to plan.
Which was one of my questions, because April 1's your constitutional deadline, and I didn't know.
We'll meet it.
so- Okay, very good. Well, I guess the other ones are for the budget mod, so that
Sounds
was it
good.
for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No other questions? Mrs. Kelly?
I don't have anything. I think most of you received a packet of information that had a bunch of brochures in it. This is the long-awaited economic development workforce brochure that Mike Bailey spearheaded, and several players had involvement in it. And Sharon Price at C&E so graciously made that look very professional, and we were able to get these out to everybody. I think Gina delivered them to us about 5:30 Tuesday afternoon. So if you want more, we can get some more. We have about 5,000, and hope you like them. We worked real hard. It's been a major undertaking for us to put that together, so hope you enjoy it. Any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On your report, you had like 35 people that came through the different job fairs, but then it reported that only 12 were scheduled for second interviews.
I think my report went in before we actually finished the job fairs. We did a total of 7, and I'm not really sure what the number was, but I know it was somewhere around 200 or somewhere close to 300 when we all finished. I'm not really sure the number, but it was very successful in some locations. We didn't have as many turnout in some areas, but in those areas where we had a light turnout, those applicants probably got hired in those areas because of where they were located. And I think overall Jan, Rob, Melanie, Brad, Dennis Carter, and Vivian and her team worked very hard, very diligently, in trying to get these people through there. And we've got two big major job fair, resource fairs planned in May at Catoosa and at Hard Rock. And these will be resource fairs in addition to job fairs. So these are the big ones that are coming up that we had last year. So I know that the employment rate for C&E has come up tremendously since we started this effort. And I know that some of the positions that they had open that needed to be filled have been filled. So we are working very closely with them on that. But I don't know the exact number, and I do apologize that I don't have that.
And I'm not so much focused on the numbers. What I was really trying to get to was, regardless of what that looked like, how did those people move on to the second interview, and what do we do with the ones that don't? Do we try to counsel them and figure out if they're lacking skills or the GED? I mean, do we complete that so if they show up, we're doing a
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
That's what I needed.
Jan has been in contact with Bob and Vivian's office to determine who actually is in the pipeline to be hired. And we have sign-in sheets, and we have email addresses, telephone numbers for those who weren't successful, because we want them to come back through when we have this other one. And as we get these other bites on other businesses, we want to encourage them to come back out, and we'll send them postcards. But we are going to be bringing a group of them in and doing some life skills classes with them, because we determined in some of the locations that there is a lot of people that are really not geared for being interviewed when they come in for those job fairs. And we want to make sure that they come appropriately ready for that.
That's what I was looking for, and thank you so much, because that will just change lives, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions for Mrs. Kelly? Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Mrs. Knight?
You have a copy of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much. I take that as a sign that we're doing such a great job. There are no questions.
Okay, let's move on to the consent items. First is Taro. Do I hear a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve, so I got two questions.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Go ahead, Counselor Watson.
Thank you. Two Feathers Enterprises, I take Katua, should be United Katua Band. And I wanted to make sure we still are Cherokee Nation preference and everybody else is other Indians, is that correct? Ms. Kelly?
That is correct.
Okay. And then on C and D at the very end on page 13, the last one, I assume that's one of our entities, but it's pending because it's under investigation to determine eligibility. So help me out on this one.
The Terrell actually received a complaint, and just like we did on the last one, the last vendor that we went through, anytime we receive a complaint, we suspend their preference until the question and answer or investigation, however you want to look at it, is completed. They will be coming in for an interview next week to give us the outlay of their company, how they actually purchase products and how they deliver the products, to make sure that they are doing the same as all the other Terrell vendors in the office supply business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, on to cemetery restoration assistance. Mr. Evans?
I think you were handed an updated cemetery report. Do want to point out that the funds will be fully obligated with this list.
I don't have a handout.
My understanding you'll be,
You didn't get an updated list.
go ahead, Mr. Mossman.
He does.
You can go down the list and read them.
He does. Look, first I want to make a motion to add $50,000 cemetery fund. And take it out of the $385,000, what was that in?
$895.
Or $895, whatever.
It'd be the unappropriated revenues that will be
Unappropriated revenue.
part of Mod 7,
Gonna
to
be
be
part of
discussed
Mod
here shortly.
And I'll make that motion.
That'd be
What was the motion?
add it to Mod 7,
$50,000.
For what?
Second,
cemetery preservation funds.
any discussion? Any discussion?
Second.
Don Garvin, second.
I'd like to, in the discussion, I'd like to add Bell Fox Cemetery to the appropriations for the 500.
Second by Commissioner Everett.
I guess.
For that, we have to wait for vote on the 50.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the 50? And 50,000 for the rest, the cemetery restoration assistance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Point of information, that was with the clarifications, like that one is not in District 5, it's in District 4. Relocated Cemeteries Family Finders Club. I talked to Gail, so I thought it was on the amended part.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other cemeteries that need to be added?
Oh, it is the right county, just District 4, not 5. Okay, got it.
Any other cemeteries need to be added?
I'm aware of.
At Fall Leaf Cemetery, I have not given this to Gail, Fall Leaf Cemetery in Bartlesville.
Okay. Would you accept that?
Northern Missouri.
Do y'all accept it in your second?
I'm adding.
Okay, is that all? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? On to community assistance now.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know where y'all's copies of these updates are, so there's not that many. If I could just read them to you in addition to what's in your bill. On the community assistance, there's a Victory Cherokee organization, 3,200, Mr. Anglin. Steely Springs Baptist Church, 175, Mr. Byrd. Tahlequah Public Schools, 1,000, split between the three counselors. Cherokee Artist Humanities Council, 2,245, evenly split at $281 between Ms. Jordan, Mr. Walking Stick, Ms. Fishing Hawk, Mr. Snell, Ms. Hargis, Ms. Fulbright, Mr. Lay, and Mr. Hoskin. And lastly, Oak Hill Piney Community, $300, 100 each from District 2 representatives.
Is there any others that need to be added?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
community assistance, $500 for the Benita Indian Territory Coalition Special Olympics Project. Benita Indian Territory Coalition, BITC, Special Olympics Project. And that's $500. And $750 to Oklahoma Union School for some testing equipment.
Second one was how much?
$750.
Mr. King?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd like to amend that to for Rogers County Cherokee Association, $3,500. We want to split that, half Karen, half Lee.
How much?
3,500.
$1,750 each. Okay, got it.
You got that? Okay, Mr. Walker.
Hey, Doug, what'd be your recommendation? I forgot to follow up with the speaker. We have a Cherokee constituent that led her team to the women NCAA National Championship for Elite Eight. Played for Kansas Jayhawks, Angel Goodrich. And as a legislative body, we need to recognize her because Angel grew up in Adair County and she grew up Cherokee. And and I like to recognize her with maybe some type of plaque with a jersey or a plaque and have all the legislative bodies sign off on it as well as chief and deputy chief. And want to know where could we pull those funds from since it's for an individual, or do we need to vote on that as a body to recognize something like that?
Madam Chair, I had Counselor Byrd for you.
Doug, you know, when I first recommended something like this, they said we could not give to individual. We could probably, and correct me there, but maybe appropriate this to the Stillwell, to the Sequoia alumni group, with that caveat that this would be in recognition of Andrew.
I wouldn't recommend you do it in that manner, because it's going under the, with the intention of going to an individual, which is just, you certainly, I don't, for the attorneys in the room, is it, I mean, this is the body that would make such a decision. Can the body decide to waive its own rule? Or how would?
Before we jump into it, let us look at it. Okay, we don't have to do anything today. We also have to look at it on her end. What can she receive? She's an NCAA student. So let's just, we got the idea, let's look at it and see the best way to get it done.
There you go.
Next question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But I believe there's a budget that is under the speaker's perusal, just like the items that were given to acknowledge service, that if it's appropriate for the under NCAA rules, and then we should, through education, language, history, and culture, do an acknowledgement, then we can move it to full council that night and see if we could have her there too, or one of her family members to accept anything too.
I did contact her mother, and she's gonna check with their schedule to see if she can either come to our April council meeting or the meeting after that. So, I'll let you guys know what meeting the Angel comes to.
Perhaps you need to get the speaker and good buddy, Mr. Bird there, and figure something out. Okay. Is that all the community assistance?
I'll make a motion to pass it.
Can I just ask one question, if I could? Doug, did the one from Tahlequah Public Schools get on there?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? All opposed? Law enforcement request.
Okay, and I'm not really sure if you had any in your packet on law enforcement, but there are several on the list I'm looking at. They would begin with the town of Marble City.
It's in there, Doug.
And what would be the last one? I don't know, Gail prepares this. I don't. Okay. There are three in addition to Grove. Gans at 4,203, even split between Mr. Thornton and Ms. Fulbright. That, by the way, would deplete your balance.
City of Gans.
Gans. And 4,203, Mr. Anglin for Collinsville, yeah, the city of Collinsville, yeah. And Shoto, or, no, wrong district. Okay, Shoto has 3,000, Ms. Frey. That's what I have in addition. Shoto, Collinsville, and Gans are the only ones in addition to what's in your book.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to add $1,000 for the South Coffin Police Department's DARE program.
Any others to be added?
Is that the only one that we have so far in law enforcement in addition?
Yeah,
Okay, just make sure I didn't miss it.
call the question.
Call for the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? All the roads.
Okay. Roads program for this month doesn't have any actual projects, but it does have 2 refunds. The Stick Springs had a small refund, not really sure why they didn't consume their other $23 entitled, but, and then the East 370 Road Overlay Project, Ms. Calvin Watts District, did have a $6,026 refund for project completion under budget.
There's none to move for approval.
Motion to approve.
Kara. your 370 road project came in $6,000 under budget.
I saw that. Thank you.
Check my recommendation.
See, those are refunded back in. I'm not about to answer that, you.
On to old business, item number 1. Mr. Lake.
Pull that.
Okay. Okay. Table it enough. On to number 2, the 457 plan conversion. Douglas, can you talk about that?
Okay, you pulled it. I don't have my agenda. What was, is it mod 7?
457.
Oh, 457, I'm sorry. Okay. As you know, there's been a determination by the IRS months ago about questioning the eligibility of your 457. The Benefits Department has prepared a plan document to do a direct rollover conversion into a 401k plan. They are needing, however, direction from the body as to consent to go ahead and proceed with this 401k plan. As to the components of it, as you recall last month, we discussed 2 options on a possible 401k, one that mirrored CMB, one that mirrored CN. There are prohibitions about a hybrid because a hybrid would make your plan could be deemed as favorable to one of our other governmental, either the government plan or the business plan. They're recommending, I want to speak for them, the nation one? The nation, the easiest? Okay. See, Ms. Burrell says the better match would be the one that mirrors the nation one, which is a 7% match. And you remember this document that we sent out recently? They
Move to
just
approve the recommendation by Human Resources.
I had Don Garvin before you, please. Counselor Garvin.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
I was just going, sorry, I didn't have a discussion. I just wanted to comment that appreciate all the work they've done and the patience. Now, the question I have is, as far as timing on the actual plan document coming to fruition and being able to have rollover conversion forms ready for the body, when do you anticipate those will be ready?
They're working on the rollover forms, but we hope we can sign this month, so I don't know if this way we, the next agenda, or I can need to by individually.
Okay.
But this month.
This month. As far as the investment options for the 401k, will they be the same as the government plan options that are currently out in the nation before we?
It won't be the same because it's with a different carrier, but they're putting a lineup together.
Similar
and it'll be
lineup.
very, various options, just like the 457, various options.
Okay. Thank you.
No, new business, item 1. Speaker Gordon.
If, I guess I need to address that to, the human resource people. You're developing the rollover form, but there's also, as we discussed before, you could roll out to another institution if you wanted to, is that right?
That is right. It'll be all on one form, and that will be an option, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
New business, item 1.
Mod 7?
Yes.
Okay. In reviewing Mod 7 as submitted by the administration, we did have a slight decrease in the grant funding for this month. We did have over $200,000 of other federal grants that came in on some new awards and grant increases. And the new awards was around called a Walking On grant for $175,000 and a Terrell grant for $31,000. There were some carryover adjustments on some DHHS grants with the family violence and preservation, as well as the LIHEAP. The mod itself has 13 budgets, $12.5 million being increased. Now, some of this is due to some heavy transfers occurring between our operating budgets and our capital fund for some major projects that are getting ready to start, as well as the Veneta Clinic that's already begun. It does include a general fund request for the deputy chief in the amount of $117,000 for for half of his administrative costs in breaking out the deputy chief and 3 administrative staff, including a receptionist and clerical position. And there's an IDC budget that would go in conjunction with this one. There's also the creation of the constitutional provided position of Secretary of Natural Resources, which is also in here for the remaining months of the year at $91,985. And again, this particular function is split in the indirect cost pool. There's an unappropriated revenue budget, which is going to be pulling in the excess revenues that are available for appropriation as defined by the cash reserve legislation and the Attorney General opinion on cash reserve. And then the following cash reserve fund is actually fulfilling that previous legislation as outlined in the Attorney General's opinion. There's a cash match for grant budget. It has a small transfer in it to a community action project. Then again, the indirect cost pool has 3 budgets in it. The before mentioned Deputy Chief, Secretary of Natural Resources, as well as a 100% funded Health Executive Director IDC, which has $148,000 of request in it. It primarily for administrative salaries, fringe benefits, and other associated costs. That does represent almost the equivalent of a 1 full-time equivalent. Department of Interior, Public Law 102-477, the Child Care is requesting an increase of $4.5 million, primarily on contracted services, which is where the heavy load of their expenditures typically remain in those child care services being provided or contracted. It's also a transfer out to the Capital Projects Fund for a new Stillwell Child Care Center of $5 million, which I'll mention later in Mod 3 that will be discussed after this one, particular appropriation. The economic stimulus funds has a slight increase in carryover as they run out those dollars for child care, and that leaves with the heavy fund that's being impacted here in this mod of $7.25 million. And that's for these 2 major projects that we've got ongoing. The Bonita Health Clinic is increasing spending authority of $2.25 million of carryover for the startup cost. And as indicated in my memo, the documentation indicates that once IHS funds are received, then a budget modification will be submitted to replace these carryover funds with current year funding dollars. The Health M&I Projects Fund identified there has a $5 million transfer out to the Capital Projects Fund. This is in relation to the Bonita Clinic, and these dollars for furniture, fixtures, and equipment purchases. As that clinic starts getting closer to being online, they have the funds ready there to put the furniture and fixtures in. And that also will be mentioned later in Mod 3. And lastly, that brings to some a little over $9,000 of private funding, again for the Community Action Project, which has a matching grant that was mentioned earlier in item 5.
Speaker, or I gave you promotion. Madam Chairman, I'd like to move the approval with a modification. Increase the council's budget by $50,000 for the purpose of contracting with an expert with expertise in statistics, mapping, redistricting related discipline that the speaker could contract with. And then I would also like to make sure that we probably already have done it, but Councilman Thornton increased the cemetery budget. Does that need to be reflected in the budget model done? That we increased?
Would need to go alongside this model, yes.
What, $50,000? So the $50,000 to increase the cemeteries is Councilman Thornton.
Discussion, please.
Thank you. Before we vote on those amendments, we need a source, is one comment. But by my calculations, even if you accept the Attorney General's position on the contingency reserve, which I want to put on record, I still object and do not believe is correct, because I think it's total operating budget and capital budget combined, because it reads comprehensive. But regardless, even if you just look at the comprehensive operating budget, minus the transfers, and including the $5 million that we could do for a line of credit, it appears just on this budget mod that we're $580,187.07 short on our contingency reserve of 1.75%. And I have a number of questions. So I don't know how we can resolve that.
I can comment on
Okay.
cash reserve calculation, if you like. The operating budget, based on the Attorney General opinion, is $473 million. And there's a reconciliation being provided here that'll be behind the budget for this item, okay? The calculation, Legislative Act 30-07 was specifically providing an exclusion to this requirement of interfund transfers. So it reduces $23.8 million out of that operating budget for a total of $450 million. Now, when you apply 1.75%, the requirement is $7,870,000. There's $8,975,000 amount of cash reserve from the line of credit, the statutory cash reserve on the fund balance from the prior year, and how much monies we set aside this current year, which leaves the excess of statutory requirement of $1,105,000. And that excess is being pulled into, and I'm not sure if this was really clear in the budget, because it's doing a couple of different things, but there is a line item budget within here that if you go to the pivot table right behind the act, you'll see a table that's showing it says operating mod 7. That item, if you see item number 3, unappropriated reserves, you'll see the net column, the net change is availing $1,105,000. That's lifting the restriction that was previously interpreted to be restricted under the Cash Reserve Act. Now, one other thing I want to point out is that the cash
I'm
reserve.
sorry, point of information, what page are you on?
Right there. The net change,
This is our carryover monies.
this is current year. So the item, and the one right below it, item number 4, it says cash reserve fund. You see that is the $2,870,000 that is required in addition to the $1,256,000 already on the books and the $5 million line of credit. That's how we get, that's the reconciliation that I included behind that line item budget.
So I guess, and this is both to you, Mr. Evans, and our treasurer Horn, if we're gonna buck our laws and we're not gonna follow them, then we need to change the language in the budget mods and in the tables. Because the rate, I start off on this budget mod, total budget authority of $506,686,945 under the operating budget. Where you're getting, I was trying to flow through all the documentation, and if I was a regular citizen, I would really struggle with this to know that we're being transparent. And if you go to page 13, it also has the 500, it has comprehensive budget for fiscal year 2012, which would be the language in our act that says this is what we should be going off, not the lesser number. Then you do the less transfers and you get this number that I do.
Okay.
So,
I think
so
I
we
can
need
clarify.
to be, we need to clarify this
I can
before it
clarify.
goes to full council.
No, I can clarify now.
Well, it needs
The
to be in
enabling.
writing for our citizens.
Yeah, I think it is.
Please go ahead.
The enabling legislation clearly states it's calculated on the initial comprehensive budget, not the budgets accumulated through mods. I'd be happy to.
It is to be changed every month as we do different transfers.
Any more questions?
The councilwoman yield while she's researching.
Yes. Yes.
Just to clarify, we have an Attorney General's opinion on this issue, is that correct? That's correct, right? I mean, when it comes to, and I believe me, I've disagreed with some Attorney General's opinions in my time here on the council, but, you know, I may as well go pound sand because it's the law once it's an Attorney General's opinion. So when we talk about bucking the law, I think think we should be a bit more careful because the law is what the Attorney General's opinion has said. And if we don't like it, I suppose we can do more than pound sand. I suppose we can go to the courts. But for all intents and purposes, I don't want the record to be clouded with the idea that we're going into some uncertainty here in terms of the law. We're going into crystal clear certainty in here in terms of the law because the Attorney General said so. If we disagree, there's a process to attack that, but that hasn't been invoked yet. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
I will try to work with Treasurer Horn and Mr. Evans offline in order to prepare for full council, so it is clear for all minds. But I'm still concerned, when I read the budget mod language around the 1,105,157, is that unbudgeted or is it carryover? Because it's carryover time, and we haven't seen that, right? So, what is it?
It's current year revenues that were previously identified to have a restriction on them for a cash reserve that, according to the Attorney General opinion, is excess, and therefore those restrictions are being lifted through that opinion. Therefore, it's available for appropriation out of this year's budget. The carryover, once the CAFR is issued to us, and I believe it's due tomorrow, it will identify a different number, a much higher number of actually unexpended prior year dollars.
Okay, then I had 3 other questions. So the deputy chief budget for a few prior years had been included and budgeted for the deputy chief's position and any of his staff within the chief's budget. So now we are funding additional dollars for the deputy chief and at the same time separating out those budgets.
That is what they're requesting.
Okay, so they've already spent whatever's been budgeted and they need this additional money and we gotta separate out these budgets, which is fine. I mean, I think that's great. It's clearer.
I can't answer that. I haven't actually looked to see if they're spent all of their budget for this year yet.
Can we get an apples and oranges comparison from the last 2 fiscal years to this one where we're at? And like what those type of positions, what they're funded at and how much is expended? And then, so we're asking for, we're gonna create the Secretary of Natural Resources, which has already been hired, and we're funding an additional $175,280 for that new office.
I believe that's what those 2 budgets would total.
So was there authority
One moment, please, that's the Attorney General.
Point of clarification, to my knowledge, there's been no one hired for the,
I thought that's what that Mr. Davis was announced for.
no,
Okay,
no,
that's
no,
something
no,
else.
no.
Okay.
That is something else. And also, we're not creating the office of Secretary of State.
constitutional,
It's a
but we haven't
constitutional
had one.
office. Yes, we've ignored that part of the Constitution,
Right.
and we're not going to ignore parts of the Constitution anymore. We're going to fill that slot.
Okay, so the last question, there's a Health Executive Director IDC budget mod, so what have we done today? What was it before, and what is the actual difference? What's the change? What are we doing here with this budget mod with respect to the Health Executive Director?
Go to their budget, if you bear with me. And I want to make something very clear. I'm not justifying administration's budget. I'm only explaining what was submitted to me. So if there's justification needs to be made for what they're asking for, Ms. Horn would need to address those questions. Okay. There are 2 line items that are being increased by this budget, salaries and fringes. The net increase is a 0.7 full-time equivalent, and the impact is related to 19 positions within this budget. Now, comparing 19 positions that are in this request to how many positions in prior years were in this budget, I can't answer on the cuff. I'd have to get back with you on that.
So, may I just clarify? So, thank you, Madam Chair. So, we need additional dollars for this position, and we're gonna budget more dollars for that one position or salary. I mean, I was confused why we didn't have money. It wasn't clear to me when I read the documentation what was really being authorized.
Okay. And what was being asked for? Understand. Let's see what I put in here. Okay. I would defer to, probably to administration to provide the information to explain their actual staffing proposal that they're requesting. Or again, I don't want to come across as looking like I'm justifying or I'm defending administration's budget.
I don't have it with me, but I can provide it before full council.
I would appreciate it, because I read the documentation, it was not clear what was actually being done. Were we having to increase the salary range for folks? Were we having to add new positions? Or had we overspent that budget early and needed additional money? I wasn't clear what was going on. Thank you. Thank you.
I did,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
there's one item in this budget that I think could shed light to a large portion of this request, Ms. Watson. That is that there is a new position being added to this budget. It's not a new position to the Cherokee Nation, but it's a new position to the Health Department for the Chief of Staff, that 45% of the Chief of Staff's budget is being has been authorized under this indirect cost pool because of, obviously because of administrative, organizational. That's the only way you can do this, is through organizational charts and assignments and duties.
So, thank you. So that infers that the money was somewhere else and we're just changing budget titles, but the way I read that is we're having to incur new money to accommodate this.
I'll speak to that. We had a surplus in the IDC pool that allowed for this.
Okay, and so that's part of the 3 million that's identified in that IDC that's being pulled from elsewhere to be used. That
I'm not
is,
clear what that is.
indirect cost pool funding is 3,139,822. And if you go to page 13, it is referenced towards the bottom that there's a net decrease. I mean, you're taking 3 million out of IDC and pulling it to put somewhere else. That's why I read all this.
No, that wouldn't be allowable. Indirect costs pool funds the necessary budgets to administer the support to all the direct-based programs that they are supporting within the tribe. The indirect costs pool, about 5 years ago, the former treasurer, Callie Ketcher, changed the process in the way the IDC pool funds its budgets. It used to be, we would show it in the system as a break-even budget. So if the expenses went up, their anticipated recovery, which is their funding, went up right along with it. The choice was made back then that let's not just arbitrarily think that we're going to collect something until we actually get it. So what we started doing was the indirect cost pool would budget whatever it needed to support all the $150 million worth of base programs. And wherever it stopped and actually expended pursuant to those budgets would drive an indirect cost rate adjustment the next year. It's an overhead pool that doesn't have a direct funding source. It has an indirect funding source from all the federal programs that are paying into it. So as it needs to enhance, and remember, if an indirect cost pool does not grow with our federal program base that's growing every year, we're going to have significant rate reductions. We're also going to have the potential of underutilization of our resources to support the program. So there's a lot of justification that's kind of underlying the indirect cost budgets, that there is a mechanism called an indirect cost pool negotiation, rate negotiation exercise that has to be occurred. Programs cannot just jump into this pool, okay? The cognizant agency that governs and oversees the indirect costs, the rate and the audit that goes along with that rate has to meet certain standards to be inclusive in that pool. So we can very easily, and we have in the past, this is not uncommon for us to see indirect cost activities move their budgets up or down wherever they need to totally support the federal program base. And as our federal programs have been growing, as you all know, for years, and it's continuing to grow now. So if a program doesn't feel like they want to wait until a comprehensive budget cycle and the budget hearings for the next fiscal year, and they need to up their support cost in their program, this is how we would see it. But you can't take money out of an indirect cost pool and give it over to some other funding source.
So the way I read it then is that we did not spend $3 million budgeted.
We may not, are you looking at that landscape report that showed a funding source?
Comprehensive budget, yeah.
Okay, that's saying that they're anticipating to collect $3 million more than they even have budgets to spend in that pool.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Keep in mind that, if I might, one other comment, Madam Chair. In times of federal program-based increases, and let's hope this trend continues in the future. In times of federal program-based funding increases, there are constantly going to be strains put on the support functions, whether it's purchasing, accounting, finance, half of the council, half of the chief, the health program IDC, education program IDC. All these are support functions. If they don't somewhat move and grow with what they're trying to support, okay, that's almost in an IDC audit can be just as detrimental as growing too fast. Because the federal government is very, very in tune and is looking for, are the programs getting their adequate support out of that IDC pool. Okay. I hope that sheds, I know IDC is a confusing thing, but I hope that sheds a little bit of light to what we're talking about.
Call the question.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. No, number two. Yes, number two, new business. By acclamation.
Mod 3 to the capital budget is an $8.2 million increase and has two projects in it. That's the Child Development Center I mentioned earlier in Stillwell, which is requesting $5.1 million. And again, now, these are funds that have been authorized from the Department of Health and Human Services by the Office of Indian Energy and Economic Development for that construction. And the Veneta Clinic construction of $3 million funded by a carryover from the Maintenance and Improvement Project. That particular monies are a reprogram of $5 million, partially offset by the actual carryover of the construction budget of $1.9 million. And again, that's for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Move for approval. Second.
All those in favor? Favor?
By acclamation.
By acclamation. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And number three of new business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a resolution for the donation of a surplus laptop computer to the Indian Women's Pocahontas Club. This computer originated from CNE, and it was surplus. I had a request from the organization, which has memberships throughout the 14 counties. They'll put this to good use. With that, I move for its approval.
Any discussion? Councilor Watt?
Thank you. Some of my constituents who are members of the organizations had questions because there is no single location or office or building. So they wanted to make sure that that stayed with the Pocahontas group and was property of the Pocahontas group and not individuals, and asking how it would also be disposed of.
Councilwoman, I can respond. I think, as we've done in the past, if we donate to an organization, we expect that it's owned by the organization. The organization has its internal rules over where that computer goes, and I don't think we would micromanage that. I think our expectation would be that if the organization owns it, they'll use it as anyone would use a laptop, which of course is mobile in nature. So, does that satisfy the concerns?
And I just have one other more question, because the Rogers County Sheriff's Office needs laptops and such, so I was excited to know that we could get laptops for folks, because I think of that public service like that as being pretty important. So if you would share how you go about getting those laptops and stuff, there's other people that have high needs for it, certainly.
I got a request, and I posed it to the government, and I posed it to Cherokee Nation businesses. And I believe the response from the government was that they did not have any, and the response from Cherokee Nation businesses was they had one. So it was right place at the right time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you.
Any more discussion? All those? Oh,
Like we added the spot.
Steve.
Walking stick, Lori Gordon, Snails, Flag, Argus, Bird. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 26th at 3, and we're adjourned.